Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
Good morning. How's everybody this morning? Good. Nice to be back. I was off walking my daughter down the aisle last Saturday, so it was wonderful to be doing that and take part in that. And Reverend Georgia Prescott from the Sacramento Church did the wedding. It was kind of funny because my daughter, some of you have seen my daughter, she's like 5'9", and she was in 3-inch heels, and her boyfriend's about 6'3", and a good-sized guy, and Georgia Prescott's about this tall, and about this wide, so she's like up here marrying these two guys. It was very funny. It was a very sweet occasion. So how are you all today? Great? All right. Me too. I have a talk, but I'm going to talk about something else. How many of you have kind of gotten to a point where you give up hope and you say, my options are done, my options are closed off? You ever notice that in your life? And it's like, I already know it's a done deal, it's going to happen. So yesterday was a football game, right, Luke? Yes, sir. A couple teams playing against each other up in Michigan, and for a whole lot of marbles, if you would call it that. And at the very tail end of it, there was like 8 seconds left. All that one team had to do was just punt the football, and the game was going to be over, and the other team was going to lose by 4 points. And the punter fumbles the football, the other team picks it up, runs to the end zone, and scores the winning touchdown. Yeah. They had a 0.2% probability of winning the game right before that. I mean, there's 4 seconds left. All you got to do is punt the ball. How hard is that? I bring that up because so many times we sit there and go, there's no chance. And the thing is, we don't know what's going to happen in the next second. We never know what's going to happen in the next second. And so whatever your dream is, whatever you're going for, don't stop. You don't know what's going to happen next. Ernest Holmes says principle is not bound by precedent. Principle, God does not care what's been happening for the rest of the game. The only time that team led was at the end of the game. The only time that team led was at the end of the game. You don't know what's going to happen. So I saw that and I was impressed with it, and it was kind of one of those moments I just said, yeah, so I got to do something with a sermon about that. So there it is. It's not a whole sermon, it's just a little sermonette, snippet sermon. So today what we're really going to talk about is righteous judgment, which is not certain people's idea of righteous judgment, which is not self-righteous judgment, okay? But righteous judgment, we're working with the work of Emma Curtis Hopkins from her book Scientific Christian Mental Practice, which is a powerful book. The current version has a different cover. This is an old version. And so we're working through this process, taking a look at her ideas of how to be very powerful in our work and create what we want. So today we're looking at the idea of judging with righteous judgment. And she starts off by saying, within each of you is the song of the Spirit. Within each of you is the song of the Spirit. By thinking out that song within your mind, it will break forth over your affairs. By thinking that thought, that song out in your mind. In other words, if that's what's sitting in your mind is your song of Spirit, that's what breaks out over your affairs. That's what shows up in your life. Okay? What she's saying is the nature of Spirit is our nature. We're God in form, right? Okay? We're God in form. A couple people recognize that. I know you all recognize that. Breathe that in for a moment. We're God in form. And God is good and only good. That's our first 2 steps of treatment. God is all there is, and I'm one of it. God is good. God is love. God is joy. God is bliss. God is the life energy, and I am one of that. Okay? But what happens Because we ask ourselves the question, are we willing to, do we allow it to sing through us to create lives of joy and harmony, or do we get caught up in stuff? Do we get caught up in the stuff of the day? Instead of using my mind to think out the song of spirit, am I using it to think out how I'm going to deal with this particular situation in my life? And I get caught up in the circumstances, that which stands around me, literally, circumstance, that's what stands around me. Now, how did it get to be standing around me? I created it. I invited it in. I, at the very least, accepted it from somebody else. Okay, maybe I didn't sit there and say, yeah, I want that, but somewhere along the line, I at least accepted it into my life, and it's now standing around me. Guess what? If I invited it to stand into my life, guess what I can also do? Invite it to step right back out, right? Okay? So we forget that we're singing the song of spirit. We forget our song of spirit. We get caught up in appearances, and we start wrestling with those. We start getting caught up in that, and then we try to engage or fight with those circumstances instead of stepping back and saying, what's the song that wants to sing through me? Yesterday in our intentions retreat, I was talking with a person who was working with just such a situation where they were caught up in the circumstances. They had a dream. This person has a dream. And it's a big, beautiful, powerful dream. But he's caught up in the circumstances to the point that he realized he was becoming ineffective in doing the dream because he was so angry and so frustrated about the circumstances that stood around. And there were people who, he wants to create something beautiful, and there are people who say, first of all, it doesn't even need to be created. Everything's just fine the way it is. You ever meet people like that? La, 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 everything's just fine. There's plenty of indications that it's not just fine, but there's a lot of people who are saying, oh, no, it's not really happening. And then there are people who are saying, oh, it's happening, but there's nothing we can do about it. And we've met people like that, right? Okay? It's a couple of ways of avoiding whatever is really going on. And this is a person who wants to go in and say, it is happening, and we can do something about it. Okay? And so when we started working on it, I supported him in getting back to what's the original vision? What is it that really wants to be created here in spirit, from the consciousness of spirit? Not from the small mind consciousness, but from the consciousness of spirit. And we came upon something that not only could the people who say it's not happening here agree with, and the people who say, there's nothing we can do about it agree with, but it was a vision that empowers people. It's a vision that excites people. And when we turn back to spirit, when we start listening to what's that song that wants to be sung, we get something that excites everybody, that connects and touches with everybody. Okay? So it's not that there's some miracle, if we start, turning to spirit, God and all of his angels come down from heaven and make everything wonderful. It's that we get in touch with what's already there within us and what we can all agree on, because we all are in connection with spirit, right? I mean, even the most, person who we think is the farthest disconnected from spirit is still connected with spirit. They may not be acting from it, they may not be remembering it, but they're still connected with spirit. And so there's a place where we can find that connection, where I can connect with each and every person on that level. And if we're back to remembering what's the song that wants to sing through me, it takes us back to that point. It takes us back to that spirit within. Ernest Holmes says, mind, and this is capital M mind, the big mind, is the realm of causes. Conditions are in the realm of effects. Effects flow from causes and not from themselves. This is the cause and effect. New thoughts create new conditions. It's the core of our teaching right there. New thoughts create new conditions. We must learn to think in the absolute. This means to think independently of any given or experienced effect. So mind is not our individual mind. It's the infinite mind which we all use. We all tap into it. It's the ability to go to a place that's bigger than whatever is facing us. And Ernest's invitation and Emma's invitation is get away from, step back from, stop worrying about or working with the effects. I think I've used the metaphor before here of the old mining camps and cowboy camps when movies first started to be shown in these camps. It's still, the still movies. And, the villain was tying the heroine down to the railroad track as the train was coming, and eventually some cowboy would get up from the movie and take a shot at the screen, at the villain on the screen. to shoot the villain up there. Okay? We've all done that, right? I mean, not maybe that particular method, but we've all done that in our lives, okay? And so the invitation is to stop looking at the screen and trying to manipulate the screen and go to the movie that's running within and start there. Go to the source and start to get more clear. So if we don't take the time to engage mind, we judge from our small mind, which doesn't comprehend everything, and we don't see the big picture from our small mind, do we? See, Spirit's always thinking bigger. We got a small way of thinking it. So let's take a look at the quote that this story comes from. And I'm going to actually use the Aramaic translation, which is slightly different than the King James Version. The King James Version is one that gives us the phrase righteous judgment. But the Aramaic version, this is John chapter 7, verse 24, if you want to pull out your Bibles and follow along. Do not judge by partiality, but judge a just judgment. Do not judge by partiality, but judge a just judgment. Now, the story behind this quote, Jesus has gone down to Jerusalem, to Judea, which he kind of didn't want to do, but he got talked into it by his brothers. And so there's some people there who remember that he healed a guy on the Sabbath. And you're not supposed to heal a guy on the Sabbath, according to the Jewish tradition. Okay? So he's being criticized, he's being judged, and they're kind of in his face about it. And so he reminds them, he says that following the law of Moses, they circumcise on the Sabbath. That's okay. It's okay to circumcise a person on the Sabbath. And that's the purpose of that is to purify the man, to make the man whole in the face of God, in the light of God. How much more valuable, he asks them, is it to heal the whole man? If it's okay to do a circumcision to purify a person, to make them whole, how much more valuable is it to allow this person to be able to see, because that's what he'd done, restored sight. How much more valuable? But all they could see is with the blinders on, oh, you can do this, but you can't do that, even though you could say it's the same thing. And he's asking them, come on, get out of your smallness, get your head out of your narrowness, okay, and start seeing the bigger picture. What's the purpose behind all this? It's to purify ourselves before God, to make ourselves, more pleasing to God was their idea of it. Okay? So they're judging bound by old law without seeing the big picture. They're following the letter, but they're not understanding the spirit of the law. We do that, don't we, sometimes? We get wrapped up in what the letter of the law or what we think is supposed to be happening and forget to step back and say, take a breath, big picture. Okay, yeah, I can see how that works. And Jesus talks about this idea of judging repeatedly. Judge not that you be not judged. Let the person who is without sin cast the first stone. When he did that, the woman who was caught in adultery, and he said, that the person who is without sin cast the first stone. What they don't tell you in the Bible is there actually was a stone cast. It came from behind him. This little lady threw a stone at the woman and hit her and knocked her down. He turns around and says, Mom. But he's constantly reminding us to not judge. Don't get engaged in that process. Because we don't have a big enough vision to see what it is we're really looking at. We've all had experiences where we get into something, we're darn sure we know what's going on, right? And then somehow something happens, maybe time passes, somebody says something, and we suddenly realize, oh my God, I had no clue what was happening there. Okay, we've all had that experience. Yes? Or you know somebody who has. Okay? So when we judge by appearances, we're only looking at effects. We're only looking at the effect. And the invitation from Emma is to go back to cause. If we want to create a change, we have to go back to and deal with cause. We have to go back to that place within us that started to set this in motion. Emma says that sin, and sin is just simply the idea of separation. I'm separate from my good. That's all sin is, okay? It's not some hellfire damnation thing. Sin is only a mistaken idea of life, of who I am, and of what world I live in. A mistaken idea of life, of who I am, and of what world I live in. That's the only thing that a sin is. The only mistake we ever made was in mind. And truth erases that mistake. Truth, capital T, truth. When we stand in the power of that mind, it has the power to erase that truth. We're going to talk about that in a minute. It brings us back into alignment with the one mind. When we step back and we say, you know what, I'm going to stop, I'm going to go back, it brings us back into alignment with that mind, and then it brings us back into alignment with our true power, out of which we can create the result we truly, truly want, which is different from fighting with effects out here. When we live from mind, she says, there's a harmony between thoughts and externals. There's a harmony between thought and external. We're constantly in the process of moving the invisible into the visible. That's what we are. We're agents for moving the invisible into the visible. Okay? Are we doing it in harmony with what we really want? Or are we kind of having a little confusion here that shows up in our effects? And we all have that confusion. It's just a process of we start to go back and clear out the confusion and start to get back into, let me listen to what is the song that Spirit wants to sing. You know, when we were talking about the retreat yesterday, the intentions retreat, I said, you know, you can look at each of your intentions. We have 8 categories of intentions we're looking at. You can look at those, each of those, and ask the question, what is the song that Spirit wants to sing in this area of my life? What is the song that Spirit wants to sing in the health of my body? What is the song that Spirit wants to sing through my relationships? What is the song that Spirit wants to sing through my finances? What is it through my career? What is it through my recreation? What is it through my creativity? What is the song that Spirit wants to sing through these areas of my life? And that's a powerful question. If we start to contemplate that question, what is the song that Spirit wants to sing here? If you get stuck in something, what a powerful question to ask. Rather than how can I make myself right and the other person wrong, or how can I fix this? It's what is the song that Spirit wants to sing here? So I invite you this week as you contemplate that, as you have situations in your life, to ask yourself that question, to sit in that question, and to take the time for it. When we turn from judgment of externals, and we judge others, we judge ourselves, and we judge circumstances, right? Yes? All that has been created by our individual and collective use of mind is perfect. The law is perfect. Everything that's been created is using the law, the creative process. And it's done perfectly. Now, we may not like the outcome, but the process is perfect. And if we understand the process being perfect, that it works the same way every time, you know, it's like if we understand why we blew our rose garden. You know, we plant a rose garden and we get a bunch of, dead, brown things instead of roses. If we come to understand how we did that, maybe the soil wasn't right, maybe the location wasn't right, maybe the watering wasn't right, maybe we didn't fertilize enough or too much, or we got the wrong kind of rose for our climate or whatever. As we come to understand that, we can create a better, more powerful rose garden, right? And so as we look at how did we create what we created, but the process of how that rose grew was exactly in alignment with how it was supposed to grow. If it's in the wrong soil, it's supposed to show up as, not healthy, right? We don't like it, but that's what it's supposed to show up as, okay? So when we start to know that we can create new circumstances by turning to mind. And it's only our hypnotized belief in our circumstances that has kept us there, and that begins to fall away. We begin to awake from the hypnotism. Last month we were working with the 4 agreements. Don Miguel Ruiz calls it the mitote. The Hindus call it the maya, the illusion, the hypnosis that we're all in. Tony Robbins was once asked, is it hard to put people into a trance? He says, no, it's hard to get them out of the trance. We're already in. And so can we get out of that trance? Can we get out of that hypnotized belief in all that stuff out here that looks so real and start to say, time out, take a moment, I'm going back into mind. I'm going back to my center. So Emma gives us a wonderful affirmation to use with this. It's a powerful affirmation. It's a challenging affirmation, which the good ones always are, right? The good affirmations always kind of challenge a part of us and says, I don't quite fit that affirmation just yet. But the idea is that we can grow to fit the affirmation. And so the affirmation she uses for this is, I do not accuse the world or myself of sin. All is good. Take that in for a moment. I do not accuse the world or myself of sin. All is good. Say that with me. I do not accuse the world or myself of sin. All is good. Take a breath with that in. Now, if you're like me, part of your mind wants to go, well, yeah, but what about, okay? And yet what she says is, it's all God. We say it's all God, right? Everything is God. It's all God. There's nothing but God. Otherwise, we're saying, well, God isn't really infinite. God is kind of most of the universe, but then there's this little part that exists over here outside of God. And we don't believe that. That's not what we teach. We say that all there is God. And so even the stuff we don't like is God. Brussels sprouts are part of God. She has this wonderful paragraph after this in the book. She says, you have no idea how much of the inefficiency of mankind comes from thinking about the wrongdoings of others and of ourselves. Think about that. You have no idea how much of the inefficiency of mankind, of ourselves, of our own lives, comes from thinking about the wrongdoings of others and of ourselves. There is nothing more miserable than to feel that by some mistake in life that you have not amounted to what you might have been, and that your misfortunes all hinge on that mistake. You ever met anybody like that? God, I did this wrong back when I was 18 years old, 20 years old, 25, and my whole life has been downhill ever since then. Okay? Now, while a mistake seems to be so much, its right name is nothingness. Isn't that great? How would you like to look at every mistake you think you've made and look at it and say your right name is nothingness? God never made any mistakes in spirit. Your family never made any mistakes in spirit. None of you can possibly make any mistake in spirit. As spirit is all that is real of you, the facing of the worst trouble of your life with the words that the mistakes that brought them being nothing, the troubles are nothing, will have a marvelous effect in putting them in a new relation with you. I do not mean that you will be hardened to bear them. I mean that they will be gone. If you can look at your mistakes and say, you are nothing. Think about that. Think about some mistake that you think you've done in your mind, big, small, somewhere, and in your mind visualize, you are nothing. Because to God it is nothing, right? God is pure love. God doesn't hold us in judgment. God absolutely loves us because we're it. It doesn't sit there and look at itself and go, that little finger really has made a bad mistake right there. Look at that finger. I don't like that little thing. That's kind of like what we would do. God doesn't do that. Because all is law in action. We have the ability to use the law to sing the song of Spirit through us. Okay? So we take this process, we start to use it, we start to allow it to sing through us. We start to allow Spirit to sing through us. We get rid of all the judgments that we have made. And this is the invitation from Jesus. This is the invitation from Emma. This is the invitation from Ernest. Get rid of all the stuff that we have, the list. How many of you have a list of stuff you've done wrong? Okay? And we carry it around like a ball and chain. If you only knew my list. Let me share my list with you, and you can share your list with me. Okay? And what he's saying is, stop it. The old Bob Newhart skit. Stop it. Look at the list and say, you are nothing. You no longer have any power over me. Just like that football team that had made mistake after mistake and was losing the game up until the last second of the game. Okay? That list means nothing. They didn't care about the fact that they were losing the game for, 59 minutes and 49 seconds or something like that. They didn't care about that because the last 10 seconds won them the game. That's all they cared about. And the other team, by the way, at the end of it, didn't care that they'd been winning the game for 59 minutes and 49 seconds, because in the last 10 seconds, there went the game. What you've done in the past is irrelevant compared to what you do in the future, to what you do from here forward. So the question is, are you going to allow the song of Spirit to sing through you from here forward? And dump the list. So this week I'm going to invite you as your spiritual practice, 3 things. Take time to connect with mind. Take time to listen to that song. Take time to ask that question. What is the song of spirit that wants to sing through me? Maybe it's a general question, maybe in a very specific area of your life. But ask that question and listen to the answer. Take some time to listen to it. Some of you know one of my favorite phrases is get jiggy with spirit. Will Smith, Get jiggy with spirit. Spend time in that silence contemplating that life, contemplating that song, and then allow that song to be what you're thinking about. Number 2, observe the creative process at work all around you. Notice that the universe, you and people through the universe, through this power, are constantly creating. Notice how it works when you like it. Notice how the things that you don't like. Just notice it at work. Notice the beauty and the perfection of this creative process. Because we're all using it. And then release judgment about it. And use that affirmation. I do not accuse the world or myself of sin. All is good. Don't throw stones. Don't throw stones at somebody else. Don't throw stones at yourself. Don't get out your hammer and beat yourself up. Especially if you sit there and go, oh my God, look at this mistake. I've been carrying around this mistake. And then beat yourself up for carrying around the mistake. Do not do that, okay? Just dump the hammers and the stones and all that stuff. And then finally, use this process to allow the song of spirit to sing through you in a particular area. Kind of what I talked about actually in the first step. Where is it that the song of spirit wants to sing through me now, today, in this area? And just ask that, and then let that fill your mind. Let that fill your mind. What is it that Spirit wants to express through me today? And let that fill your mind. And when you're filled with that song of Spirit, you don't have time to be carrying around a list of mistakes or to be judging other people or yourself. So that's your spiritual practice this week. Are you willing to do that? Yes. Great. I'm going to close with a quote from Ernest from the Science of Mind textbook. During the process of working out a problem, many things may happen that appear to be destructive. We may pass through good fortune and bad, but if we can come to the point where we are not disturbed by things, we have found the secret. If, as Jesus said, we judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment, remembering that things which are seen are not made of things which do appear. In other words, the things that, this chair was thought of. It was a thought in somebody's mind before it became a chair. Okay? It became something from things which do not appear. Everything in our lives came from a place which does not appear. Things which are seen are not made of things which do appear. If, I repeat, we can judge in this manner, out of any chaos we can create harmony. And that last part, out of any chaos we can create harmony, is one of his all caps. If you know the Science of Mind textbook, you know that there are certain sections that he writes all caps. That was an all caps section. Out of any chaos we can create harmony. So take any situation in your life where you're feeling chaos, where you're feeling challenged, and invite that song of spirit to sing through you and make that predominant in your mind. Okay? Let's move into prayer. So I know that there is one and only one life, one infinite presence, one pure good, one pure joy, one pure bliss, one pure love. That is all there is. One life. It is beautiful, and it is us. Because it is infinite, we have to be one of this infinite presence. There's nowhere else to be. We can't be outside of it. Nothing of us is outside of that infinite good, that infinite love, that infinite wholeness that is Spirit. And so we are one of that. And just as the wave reveals the nature of the ocean, we reveal the nature of Spirit, and Spirit reveals its nature through us, because we ourselves are that love, that life, that joy, that bliss, that wholeness. That is the truth of who we really, really, really are. And so I speak my word that we remember that. We wake up and remember that more powerfully, more clearly than ever before. We hear that song of Spirit, the music of the universe singing through us. Spirit has taken the time and the energy to be each of us. And so each of us is necessary. Each of us is here on purpose. Each of us is here with a unique aspect of the song of the whole to contribute. And so we invite ourselves to remember, what is mine to contribute into the song of the whole, this song of the universe? What is my unique expression of that song? What is my unique song? And we stay in that contemplation this week, and out of that we allow ourselves to move forward, to have breakthroughs we have never experienced before, to take areas that seemed blocked up and hopeless and allow them to come to life and be fruitful and multiply. And for this I give thanks, for each and every person who does this, for each and every person who takes this on, for each and every person who opens up to that song of Spirit singing through them and says yes to that song. I am ever so grateful. For the Spirit that moves through us, I am ever so grateful. And in that gratitude, I release this word, knowing it is already so. It is already done. It is done in our minds. It is done in our hearts. It is done in our entire beings and consciousness. And so we release it into a law that moves it into form, moves it into expression in our own personal experience in the most beautiful and powerful ways right here and right now. And so it does. And join me in saying, and so it is. Thank you.
To love, serve.